friends. Welcome to Bright Green Futures, episode 31, Climate Roles with TK Rex. I'm your host, Susan K. Quinn, and we're here to lift up stories about a more sustainable and just world and talk about the struggle to get there. Today, we're going to have a quick chat with TK about her story Centipede Station in the new Bright Green Futures anthology, which just released on Earth Day and is available in ebook and paperback. But first, there are 3 things listeners should know. 1, the anthology is a collection of hopeful climate fiction stories, as you probably have come to expect from Bright Green Futures, but it is specifically from the guests on the pod and is available on a wide range of retailers, including bookshop.org, which supports independent bookstores. 2, TK's story is published separately as an ebook, and it is free right now, so make sure you go download that after the show. And 3, we're running a giveaway of cool stuff, handpicked by the authors, each item having a connection to their stories, so make sure to enter that as well. The links for all those things are in the show notes and also at the Bright Green Futures Substack. Okay, TK, thank you for coming to the pod, or coming back to the pod, I should say.
Hi, Susan. I'm so glad to be back on your podcast.
It's so great to be able to revisit with everybody. It was I get an extra bonus episode with each of you, which is so fun.
Love it.
So I asked each of the authors in the anthology to pick a theme word, something that represented the story. And you picked climate roles, but I remember you offering up several, like climate understanding, climate integration, and we made all those little puzzle pieces fit together. But there is so much going on in this story, which I love, and that really does speak to all of those things. So why don't you read for us the one-line description, and then tell us a little about the themes in your story.
All right. Okay. I'm ready. Imagine a forest in space with giant centipedes everywhere. Oh, and you're stranded there with your mom.
It's so great. I remember us going back and forth on several different descriptions of what would fit for the story, and they each had a completely different tone. And this one was so on point with the voice of your story that I thought it was just really cool. So tell us about your themes of climate roles and climate integration and understanding and all of that.
Yeah. I really I love that you got that we settled on climate roles, because roles is a really short word. I just really like that better than the other ones. It's also interesting because as I was writing the story and revising it, I went through several drafts, and the part about the roles, which you only get to near the end of the story, no spoilers, but that's an element of the story that only came in the last draft, and it's toward the end, and it was the missing piece for so long, and it became kind of, I think, one of the most to the heart parts of it. So I love that we settled on that, and I love that you suggested it.
Oh, yeah, I totally get that out of the story, too. And, we can't get specific about your story with it, but I feel general roles in the climate fight, and also, just our roles and relationships with one another are, super important things for us to dig into, and I just see people struggling with that. I literally just the other day on a solar punk Discord had a young person who's a coder. So she does programming, right? Yeah. And she's like, where is there a place for me in a solar punk future?
Oh, I can think of some things.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I can think of a million things. Why can't you? What is the problem here? And so we had a really good discussion about how she could bring her skills to do unique things, but also you don't always have to use all of your skills. Yeah. Sometimes you can just make friends and hang out and be available, and that's part of resiliency too. And I think we get really locked down into our little boxes of what our roles are, and we can only do these things or whatever. And if there's anything that I feel like a future of change is going to embrace, it's thinking outside of those roles and outside of that box. And so anything like your story that really interrogates, relationships and roles in survival, because it's kind of a survival story, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So, at many different levels. So, what I guess because we don't want to get too specific and spoil it because people have got to go read it. But what was one of the conflicts that you felt like, because you said it came in at the end where it kind of
Oh.
sharpened up as these roles? What was one of the sort of pivotal things that jumped out in that last draft?
So I don't think it's a spoiler to say that like the character in the story who she's not the main character's mother, but she's the woman who raised her. And she had been a revolutionary in the past. They're now stranded together on a space station. But it's a topic that comes up, and their relationship is it was definitely inspired by my relationship with my own actual real mother. That's not that's not like a secret. My mom, at a certain point in editing this, I was like, I should actually let my mom read this. And she's a writer. She's like in my critique group. She also writes science fiction and
Oh,
fantasy.
oh
So it's
wow.
not like she reads most of my stories. But this one I was a little scared to share with her because she's kind of a character in it. The character is not her, and the situation isn't one that we went through, but it's very close in a lot of ways to one that we went through together with my grandmother um when she was on home hospice. There's a whole like what happened right before the story starts.
Oh
It's like
gosh.
this backstory.
Yeah.
Um, and so my mom and I, she writes under Ellen Kenyon, so I'm going to plug her now. She has some stories out. And she
Nice.
edits the sci-fi fantasy magazine Roses and Wildflowers. And
Nice.
we went for a walk in the park in Tilden Park near us in the East Bay. And we like talked about the story after she'd read it, and she really had so much to share about like she's an activist going way back, and so the relationship they have where like a character who's maybe not quite understanding how to move forward, is coming to realize that their mother figure does have that experience. And me talking with my mom about that was a big part of trying to understand how that could gel in the story. So I, you know, I just have this like perfect little memory. We sat down at a picnic table, and um we just kind of talked about all that stuff, and it was a cool conversation. And the thing that stands out, which is not an answer to your question, is actually like the bit about the chef's knives, because her actual profession in the story is that she was a chef. And my mom has never been like a chef, but she's done a lot of like catering and like done that kind of stuff. And she had this very strong statement that like there's no way in hell like she would let somebody use her chef's knives that way. Like chef's knives are like the whole thing. And I had no
Oh
idea.
yeah.
So like that was like one of the biggest takeaways actually. The revolutionary stuff was secondary.
Oh, that's so great. I
Yeah.
I love that, like, having the anthology and the prompt to write this story kind of led to this beautiful moment with your mother, but
Yeah.
also like practical knowledge about don't mess with her chef knives.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so
So I
great.
worked that into the story in one of the later in the final draft as well. Yeah.
That is so great. And yeah, we don't always we think we know, especially as we get to be, like I'm older, okay? Like I'm staring down the barrel of 60 here and I'm uh been through a few different phases of life that not everybody has that hasn't reached age 60. That's kind of how that works. And
Sorry
I
here.
thought I knew so much when I was 30 and 40 and even 50. Like I mean, like there wasn't anything new to learn after that, right?
Oh
I was just gonna
no.
get older. No, that's not how that works.
Oh no.
And I was in a critique group here recently, one of my critique groups, and in one of the stories, The character is a person who's having a relationship with their parent as an adult. So it is like the character has grown up and now has this different relationship, but the child was not the main character, the parent was the main character. And none of the people who were like involved in the critique group had, a couple of them were parents, but of little kids. Like, so they don't actually know what it's like. They know how to be on the other side of that relationship as the child, but not as the parent of an adult. And it is quite different being the parent of little ones. So, so I was able to critique from that perspective. I'm like, well, as someone in that position, I can kind of tell you some things that this guy might be going through.
Interesting. I'm so curious then how you saw this story and like what you thought of the characters and their dynamic.
It was almost like one of those dizzying kind of feelings where you relate to each of the characters at their different stages. And it's like, oh, I know how she's thinking and I know how she's thinking. And this other character isn't even on stage, but I think I know how she was thinking too. And like, it was a little like that thing where you get dizzy because you got too much, going on there. But you're an amazing writer, and
Thanks.
everyone in the anthology are amazing writers. That's how I, decided to bring you on the podcast in the first place.
Well, back at you, Susan.
Thank you. But so you can pull that off and you can make that be really resonant, which is a different kind of time travel, like we were talking about before the pod, is the time travel through a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I think it does a beautiful job of that. So
interesting.
I'm excited for people to read these.
That you saw things about my story that like I didn't even think about. Like there's definitely it's not exactly like time travel because no one's going to the past, but there's a lot of time, like a ridiculous amount of time that passes just because of like space travel, in this story. And I didn't really think as I was writing it until you mentioned it about the aspect of like time travel between these different phases of life that are centered in the story. I love that you saw that.
Well, and I see that in several different stories that I've been in love with. So maybe it's a me thing, but I think it's important because in the context of, the climate crisis, I'm fighting the climate crisis for my kids. Like, I'm not going to live through the end of it. Even my kids might not get to the end of it at the rate we're going. And it's like having a generational view, a generational perspective is just an integral part of building a better world, I think.
Yeah. And especially as like science fiction writers who are trying to imagine the future and also through that imagining, like make things that are positive possible. Like, especially in solar punk, that's like very actively what we're trying to do is like imagine possibilities with the intention of making them more real, not like dystopian fiction writers, I think, aren't trying to do that in the same way. Hopefully.
They're trying to warn you off and not everyone gets the clue. But solar punk is trying to imagine a better way to make it manifest in some capacity. So
we're always like, especially when we're writing, we're living in this future that we're imagining in a way. Like we're always part of us is existing in those futures. And, we write about it because we think about it all the time, actually. Like it's not a coincidence.
No.
Yeah.
Especially for solar punk writers. I think we live what we want. We try to live our values in the world today as a way to prefigure that solar punk future today. And I spend a lot of time thinking in that kind of quasi space of like where, I'm existing today and all the like, of today. And then there's like,
this is where we need to like screaming.
It is. It's just like, oh my God, I follow this person's account on Mastodon that is just called Endless Screaming. And it just like has a scream. And I'm like, every time I see it, I'm like, checks out.
Yep.
Okay. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. All right. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time because I
Yeah.
wanted to keep these short.
Yep.
But I do want to talk about your giveaway item because it
Oh,
is so
yeah.
cool. It was one of my
Yeah.
favorites. You're giving away 3 5x7 prints
Mhm.
of an original ink drawing created by
Mhm.
you. It is suitable for framing, or
Mhm.
you can use them as cards, which is also something I love to do. Every time I
Mhm.
find an artist that I love and they've got prints for cards, I snatch those up and use them for special gifts. That's like one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
And your drawing, on top of that, represents the story, which is extra cool, and readers will enjoy that even more after they've read the story. There's lots of detail on it, and people can see it when they go to enter the giveaway. There'll be an image there. You can see it
Yeah.
has this amazing alien forest and
Mhm.
sort of built structure from the story that I won't spoil, and the centipedes. So the whole thing is just cool. I'm just so into it. And I had no idea you were an artist. So can
Oh.
you tell us a little bit about your art in general and this work in
Yeah.
particular and why you decided to make art for the giveaway?
Yeah. So, well, I went to art school. I got an advertising degree, which isn't super applicable right now, but like I did go to
Well, I
art
mean, it
school.
could be applicable, maybe not what you want to do, but
Well,
you know.
I learned things. I did learn things. But I art's always been like the other half of my creative side, right? Like I've always been a writer, but I've also always been into like drawing and painting and photography and um I recently got back into like a kind of line drawing because I wanted to do some illustrations for my collection that's coming out next year, which is the Wildcraft Drones 2026
Nice.
Stelliform Press. Please support Canadian publishers.
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
and I had just like gotten through doing that whole set of illustrations for that when you asked if I had something to contribute to this, and I was like, "Ooh, it'd be fun once my wrists heal from doing all those illustrations to do one in that style for this." And I think it's very specifically in the same style as the ones that are coming out in my collection because I want people to get a taste of what's coming up in that too. So if they like this one, they're probably going to like the ones that are in my collection. And it's just a line drawing, it's very detailed. I have sort of a meticulous approach trying to describe, but you're going to have a picture that goes along with this, so people will see it. Um, but yeah, and I think okay, one little Easter egg in it, which is also never explicitly mentioned in the story, but people who know, I think, will find this very fascinating. If you have been following certain recent scientific updates about carboniferous stem millipedes, you may recognize an image within this illustration.
Well, I'm going to have to go look that up now. Carnivorous centipedes
Car-
or no,
carboniferous, the Carboniferous
carboniferous. I don't
era
even, this is a new word for
of
me. You're going to have to tell me what that is.
it's the era of Earth's past when there were no like mammals or dinosaurs yet. It was like giant insects and like the early forests that now are coal. All of our coal comes from, most of our coal comes from the Carboniferous era. So,
Oh,
my
very
my
interesting.
great inspiration and one of my favorite prehistoric animals is a creature from that time, which people in the know I think might recognize. I was very inspired in the drawing by recent new fossil evidence. I was
Well,
very
that
excited to
is
hear
so
about.
cool. You're okay. You're
Yeah.
going to have to send me the link to that,
Ooh, I might.
obviously, because we'll put that in the show notes. I'm going to want to read it if nothing else.
Okay.
Amazing. I encourage people to go get the story, go see the art, just check it out if nothing else. And thank you so much for bringing all of this great stuff to the anthology.
Oh gosh,
So,
thanks for inviting me to the anthology and for all of this stuff, Susan. Your like presence in my life is always like a little point of reassurance, and I just love the community that you've built around this. It's one of my favorite things to come back to and check on because there's always like enthusiasm and good news and things I can relate to.
and that is so key, and it makes me so happy to hear you
Mhm.
say that. Okay, we're gonna get to the end question, which
Okay.
is like, maybe this is one of the things that is what you are doing in these crazy times to stay grounded and keep working for a better world. It's like,
Oh.
okay, this is kind of one of those things that I'm doing. But tell us, or the listeners, um, how are you doing that? Because we all
Okay.
need to hear from each other how we're doing that.
I'm gonna go ahead and give you like the radical answer. That's also like the least feasible for most people, I think. But I think that it's in proportion to the challenge that's in our world right now. As I mentioned, like had a whole career in advertising. I went to ad school. I did that. I worked in tech. I had a 401k. I still have it, but like, whatever. Like, I I was very concerned for much of my life about having that kind of stability that like buying into the system and being part of it would give me. And there was a certain point when I realized that that system was not just inherently unstable, but was actively destroying everything that I love and care about and things that I want in the future. And that system specifically was making having the things I love in the future and the future that I was supposedly saving for and being prepared for less likely. And there was inherent deep conflict that caused a lot of anxiety and depression and like long therapy sessions for years, for years. So, but you know what? It's so hard to break out of that, especially when you're already in it. Your cost of living goes up to match your salary. You're you have student loans to pay. You have a mortgage to pay, and I have all those things. I pay my dad's mortgage still. I paid off my student loans. I got laid off from my last tech job. I got a good severance package. I was really, really lucky in so many ways that I was able to do this. But I also like it took me a long time too to just settle on this path. Even like after I got laid off, and I was like, let me just see how long I can stretch out my severance package for before really deciding what to do next. And I was so lucky to have that opportunity. But what I did was decided to focus as much as I could of my life around my writing and the things that were in my skill set and my domain that I loved doing, that strengthened me, and that also were going to, at a minimum, net zero as far as impact on the world, and not actively make things worse. Um, when it came time to like actually have to pay my bills again, I was able to reduce my cost of living significantly, um, just by making some different choices around what I was spending money on. I'm also really lucky to live in California where we have Medi-Cal and a lot of great like support programs here. They're a total pain to actually sign up for. It is really complicated. It was a lot of work. If I had also been trying to work while trying to do that, I don't think I would have had the headspace for it. It's so hard and there's so many barriers. But I pushed through it. I really wanted to understand how it worked too. So I came at it with a lot of curiosity and determination and like not desperation, which is key because so many people have to do it, And for me, in a lot of ways, even though like mentally and emotionally, it felt like I had to do it, I know practically on some level that like I could hypothetically go back to advertising or tech, even though like the idea made me want to scream and puke. Like,
Right.
but I did, and I was able to then go and get jobs that are more in my community. They pay much less, but because I was able to reduce my cost of living around that and make room for it, I found work that pays my bills, that has me on my feet, that's better for like my health, that's better for having headspace to work on my writing, and that's more involved with my community. I talk to people and meet people in my community every day at my jobs. And it's a huge radical lifestyle shift that I am like still kind of in the early stages of, and like to be determined how sustainable it's going to be in the long term. But right now it's something that I still sit with and reflect on really often about how just profound it is and how lucky I feel to be able to do this right now. And I have like world anxiety, but like that personal anxiety and that personal depression that I had when I was dealing with that disconnect, that constant cognitive dissonance in my life, that's gone. And I never want to go back. Yeah, that
Oh,
was
I
a
can
really long answer. I'm sorry, but Yeah.
No, it's fantastic. I so much of that is resonating in my head right now, and I've heard you talk about that choice that you made to
Mm,
sort of radically simplify and be able to live the life that you want to live as a writer,
yeah.
and as you say, in community. And it's just an amazing thing to watch and to know that people can, or you are at least making that choice.
Mhm.
And like I said
I know not
earlier,
everybody can. I know not everybody
no,
can. Like, I
no,
don't have
I mean,
kids. I was able to pay
don't
off
have
my
kids.
student loans. There's so
Right.
many other things about this that were just lucky.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, there's no judgment in this, and like we have to
Yeah.
be really mindful of that, and I am super mindful of that, or try to be. Um and yet and yet, like this young person that I talked to before, how they couldn't see a role for themselves in the future, as if like their entire skill set has just been written out of the future.
Ugh.
And it was because they were in that box,
Yeah.
and you've stepped out of the box in a radical way. And that is so inspiring, whether or not other people can do it 100% or 75% or even a little bit. Just the possibility is empowering, I think, because that's what we have to do. We have to rethink this for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
And so I love this for you. I love that you have prioritized your own mental health. How dare you? You know? Like, I
Oh.
mean, that's just, I look at that as a very good thing. And
Yeah.
um, it also reminds me, and this episode's going longer, sorry folks, but
Sorry.
um, it also reminds me of a discussion I had with someone I was interviewing for a book that I haven't written yet, because that's a thing that I do sometimes.
I've got some of those.
Oh
We all
gosh.
do.
Yes. So she said some really amazing and profound things. And one of
Mhm.
them was she had a little one, and this was like a toddler aged kid. And they had made a choice to do not quite as extreme as what I think you probably had to do to be able to exist in the system
Mhm.
and whatnot. But she was like, I can either try to get on that rat race to make sure that he can survive the times that are coming, or I can super radically double down on community and
Mhm.
make sure he has a safety network
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy cow. That
Yeah.
is really amazing that you just did that whole thought process and then acted on it. Like, they moved to a different location. They found a community. Like, I think she was in like an apartment building where like all the people in the apartment building were sort of, they're not co-housing, but they
Mm.
were living with sort of an intentional community
Good.
and being closer to family and other stuff like that. And I was like, I'm just super impressed
Mhm.
with the intentionality of those kinds of choices, because we're going to
Yeah.
have to make, the people that aren't going to be making those choices are the ones that are going to get hit by the truck of the future when it
Yeah.
arrives, and never see it coming.
Susan, there's
And
so much I wanna say about this. I know we're already over, so I won't,
we
but,
need to
like,
have another episode. Clearly, you and I,
yeah,
TK, we need to talk.
I think we
But
should.
I really do. And not to mention that you've got another book coming out in the
Yeah.
future, which I'm sure we will circle around for that and have you back on the pod to talk about that. So
Nice.
maybe that'll be our opportunity.
Okay, let's plan on that. I love it.
Great. Thanks for coming, and I will definitely be talking to you soon. And
All right.
everyone, please go and check out TK's work.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you to TK for joining us today. We are about halfway through this mini series of episodes with each of the 6 authors in the anthology talking about their stories and their giveaway items. The giveaway is ongoing until the end of May, but each story is only free for a short time, basically the week that the podcast releases. So make sure you go and download the free story of the week. Or you can just get the whole anthology, which also contains a prose poem by TK as a bonus. As always, the links for everything are in the show notes and on the Bright Green Futures website. We need 1 million stories like these in the world. Publishing the anthology is my way of getting a few more out there. Please tell your friends and help us spread the word. can also help by downloading the free Bright Green Futures zine and sharing that with your friends, especially if they're struggling in these difficult times. Bye for now, and remember to keep imagining the possibilities.